Hello, everyone, and welcome back for episode 10 of season 2 of the Path Podcast. I am Jason.
I'm Derrick.
And we are excited to bring you the second part of our discussion of the history of our church this week. Last week, if you missed it, we talked about from the formation of the church in 1835 all the way through really now, kind of bringing us to the point where we're at. And we thought that this week it would be good to look back over just the last year, because if you think about it, the last year in my mind has felt like a decade. It's been a long year, and so it's important, I think, for us to look back, because especially since we're still in the middle of 2020.
Yes,
we are in the middle of a pandemic still. Let's not forget that. We can't discount that. And I think it's easy that when that's still the filter through which we view everything, it's easy to lose sight of how God is at work.
Yes, yeah.
And so for us to look back just over the last 9-10 months and think about and see how God has worked in incredible ways through the church here at Lafayette First Baptist, I think it'd be really important to look at that. So let's have a discussion about 2020.
Yeah.
What it has been.
Yeah, I want to say, I noticed that you're wearing the same thing you were wearing in the last episode.
Well, and I noticed that you were wearing the same thing as well.
Yes.
How crazy that
so
2 weeks in a row that we would wear the same clothes.
It's because we recorded it back to back. But.
What? You're supposed to give away the illusion. What?
Yeah. I was going to also say that, the whole idea of doing these two history podcasts, it really comes down to, this is a historic time. Everybody said that. Unprecedented. I mean, all the words, right?
Yeah, all the buzzwords.
Yeah, that have gone out in the news media and all that during this time. Well, I thought, surely there's something here. We talked about this last episode. Yeah. Surely there's something here about that, 102 years ago or whatever, when there was the pandemic at the time.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't. And I thought, man, we can't miss this for like 100 years from now when there's another pandemic. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Hopefully not, but hopefully definitely not before then.
Yeah.
We're not wishing that on nobody. This is a 100-year thing, Yeah. Right, yeah. So, but then when they're looking back, maybe they'll even listen to this podcast. I don't know how.
Yeah, maybe.
Surely, I don't know. I mean, 100 years from now, how would you... I don't know.
The internet doesn't forget. Surely it'll still be there.
I can't imagine how they're going to listen to it now, because this is so cutting edge for us.
Right.
It's digital, it's on the internet, But when they look back, will they see what we did, and how we faced, adversity and prevailed, Lord willing, and Lord, praise the Lord,
right. Absolutely.
And so that, that's kind of, to me, why, when we're kind of brainstorming ideas, it was like, hey, what if we did this and kind of, have this opportunity?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I think that one of the things that the reason that this conversation happened was because it was like, man, it'd be great if we could glean something from how people led during that time. And not that we've done it perfectly, because we haven't, but God has really done some incredible things.
Absolutely.
Some incredible things this year that, if we're being honest, those things probably wouldn't have happened were there not a pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's something that we shouldn't lose sight of as we think back over this year.
I think it'd be cool, though, to start in January, because January was already monumental for our church. I don't think people understood this. And looking back, it's easier to see than it was in the moment. But we were trending... in a really good growth pattern.
Yeah.
Things were ticking along very, very well, January through the beginning of February and the beginning of March. Where when I came June 8, 2018, I found out the church, and attendance is not everything, but it's something you can look at, right?
Sure.
The attendance, average attendance, so sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but if you took the whole year, the average attendance at the time was 275 people total. That's worship, kids. I think at the time, this was even including our 4 kids. There were about 19 kids in kids ministry at the time.
Yeah.
January 2020, we were running 50 kids.
Yeah.
January 2020, we were running 320 on average.
Yeah.
Some higher,
some
a little lower. but our average attendance was 320 at the time.
Yeah.
So we had grown in really not even a full 2 years, you know.
Yeah. It's like a year and a half.
From 275 to, trending up to 350.
Yeah.
And, so I mean, things were blowing and going. We started off the year really well financially, which typically, and this checks out if you look through old records. Mm-hmm. First of the year, people kind of spend all their money. In December, it takes a little while for people to amp up. And so you're usually under budget January, February, March. You pick back up March, April-ish, and then May, and then June, you kind of dip down. June and July dip down. And then
people are traveling.
Then you come back and finish out the year well. And our church has done that again and again. The cycle looks the exact same.
Yeah.
This year was different, man. We were already above budget most of that time, or at budget most of the time, which was so a lot of good things were already happening. And then we start hearing information from about China and this virus that's coming out of there, and travel bans or not travel bans and all this kind of stuff. And it didn't seem like it to me at the time. I'm like, oh, that'll never affect us in little Lafayette, Georgia.
Right.
But it did pretty quickly.
Right.
I remember receiving a phone call from local health director and said, this is not looking very good.
Yeah.
And we're encouraging churches for, they were very clear to say that.
Yeah.
We were encouraging churches to consider going online only, which is something you couldn't have done 100 years ago, but you could.
Yeah.
Going online only for like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And if, that was the whole flatten the curve discussion or whatever, and it's like, what do we do? I don't know what to do. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I remember calling a meeting on a Saturday. We were already planning on meeting Sunday. Now, we had put out a video and some stuff that said, hey, here's the extra measures we're taking to be cautious and concerned about your health, or cleaning, this and that, or whatever. We had planned all that out.
Yeah.
And then I had received this phone call, and it was somewhat desperate, like, this doesn't look very good at all. We encourage you to please consider this, and just for a few weeks, right?
Yeah. Right.
Just for a few weeks.
Here we are 9.5 months later.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember calling that deacons meeting, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
Because I felt like the best thing to do was heed the advice of a local guy respected in our community. Yeah. Doesn't have a political agenda or whatever, which was already kind of trickling up. It's a health official.
Yeah.
I'd even reached out to some of our own church members who were nurses and professionals, and of course, deacon chairs and that kind of thing, and said, "What do we do?" And so I went to that meeting. I was trembling because I thought the best thing to do was to heed their advice and go online for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that.
Right.
And who wanted to do that? Closing your church doors is the perception, though we weren't. We actually opened it up to more people in a way.
Yeah.
But it's not a thing any pastor in their right mind would want to do, you know? And I did not. But I really thought it was the best thing that we could do to serve our neighbor, to be kind and considerate of those who seemed, at the time and still are the most vulnerable, our senior adult population. And so March 15th, we decided to do online only.
Right. Yeah, and that's the only reason that date is seared in my head. The only reason I remember that is because the last time that we met normal was March the 8th. The only reason I remember that is because I preached that Sunday. And so I don't like to think that sermon is what closed down our church. But no, I'm joking. But yeah, March 15th. So let's talk about what has happened since March 15th.
Yeah. Well,
so go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I jumped out in front of you. The crazy thing was, man, is that at the time, not every church was prepared to go online. Yeah. Thank goodness, in God's providence.
Yeah, we already were doing that.
We were doing that already to meet a need in our community through our radio. The radio, they use our live feed, so we did that through that. And then also many of our shut-ins and other people had begun to discover our online services.
Yeah.
We just had a camera up in the loft, up in the balcony.
Yeah.
Just shot down. There was really nothing, no control to it. It was just one wide shot. Wasn't great or whatever. But many of the churches didn't even have that, and so many churches around us, and even churches that we came from, were not meeting at the time.
Right, they just shut
down. And
so
that Sunday, where we would normally have, and I use views lightly because it's not like somebody sat there for 40 minutes and watched our entire service. Mm-hmm. But we would have anywhere from 500 to 700 views on a video. Mm-hmm. That service garnered 3,500 views.
Yeah, on March 15th. Yeah.
And we were like, whoa! And that was one of the things we heard in other circles, that many people who were doing that were receiving a lot more clicks and views on their videos. And so it was crazy how quickly that caught on. And so by closing our physical doors, we opened up this virtual door that we had no idea even existed.
Yeah, and it's incredible. This is we're gonna jump ahead and then we'll go back. But I recently have watched that like March 15th video, and compared to what we're doing now, like thank God that we had the ability to update that and upgrade that, and it's God is so good that our live streams, I think. Is there room to improve? Absolutely, but I think they look so great now compared to that March 15th day. So it's almost like, hey, those 3,500 people, come back and check out what's happening now, how God's working. And
we had to do a lot of tweaks.
We did. And all the fly stuff, too. Yeah,
and try to figure out. There was one Sunday that the other churches finally got into it, remember?
Yeah. Yep.
And it wasn't just Boxcast, which is what we were already using.
Our live stream service,
Our live stream service, but others as well. They were not able to handle the load of all these churches that weren't previously doing.
It was like the internet broke all of a sudden.
It really was, and so here we are ready to start, and nothing. It's like blank. And so I run and pull my iPhone out and make a Facebook video and said, "Hey, we're having technical difficulties." Yeah. Eventually, it caught back up, but for a while there, we were trying to run my Facebook live on my phone, and then another. It was crazy. Talk about on the fly.
Right.
That was really crazy.
And yet, through all of that, even through all of our fumbling through things initially, God still has worked and moved. And just over the last, in the middle of pandemic, when we're not having normal services, we've had several families join our church.
Absolutely.
We've had people get saved and be baptized through that.
Yeah.
God is at work, even in the midst of a pandemic, which is something that needs to be celebrated.
Oh, man, yeah.
So, which I think is incredible. So let's just let's walk through the year a little bit and see how God has been faithful for the sake of time here. It started out like in March, late March and April. That was when the wear a mask thing is coming out everywhere. We should probably wear masks, and we had a group of ladies who really helped get some masks to people who didn't necessarily have them. So
remember at the time, they weren't sure about the mask thing, which is controversial because but because
that can be
right
discussed
now,
elsewhere.
Right now, masks are the thing, right? 9.5 months later, but at the time, they were actually discouraging. Some were discouraging the people in the community from wearing masks, so that because we were so low nationally and state-wise. We were low on PPE. So PPE is personal protection equipment, and that included masks like N95s and all that
the
stuff.
Healthcare workers legitimately needed. Yeah.
So we had heard from locally, but even we were able to go to South Georgia. My sister-in-law, her hospital was overrun because she was near a big outbreak in Albany, and they were getting a lot of theirs from Albany and Tifton, and so they were being overrun, and they didn't have PPE, and so they were having to reuse and all this kind of stuff, and they were trying to get people to make masks. Our church made 50 or so that we sent down to her. Yeah. They were elated. Yeah, we were able to send some locally and nearby as well. But such a cool outreach. You know, that you could do safely from your home,
Absolutely.
but send it here. We can send it off.
Absolutely.
And we even have a photo of my sister-in-law with her fellow nurses wearing those masks.
Yeah, which is really cool. So let's talk about some ministry that's happened through the year that, again, we probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to do this type of ministry had there not been a pandemic. But the first thing is that we have we've been able to partner with another church, and we've been able to partner with the school system here in Walker County and distribute food to people, because one of the things that people don't necessarily think about is that there are a lot of kids who depend on the school system for food every day. And so when school closed down in April, these kids are now have no source of food. And so we were able to partner with the school to be a distribution point for the school, and talk about that way that we were able to distribute some food around here.
One of our members was the person doing that anyway. That's Michelle Coker, and so we were able to be established as a drop-off point. People could come pick up, and we worked through that, and picked up food and served for quite a while doing that.
Yeah.
We also partnered later on with Oakwood. They received some free or cheaper food boxes.
Through Samaritan's Purse.
Right. Yeah. We were able to distribute to some needy, families that needed it here. We're able to do a lot with food distribution early on. In fact, at the same time, a tornado came and hurt 5 families near us, one of our own, and we were able to provide some food for them through our partnership with the Care Mission in town. We had folks donating their stimulus checks to help in some of those ways, and so we were able to take some boxes of fresh food to those families who didn't have.
Right.
All their stuff was destroyed from the tornadoes. So we were able to help as far as food distribution in many ways.
Yeah. So then in that time, so over late March, April, and the majority of May, we were able, through God's grace, to be able to go virtual or digital with all our services. And over that time, we were able to celebrate Good Friday virtually. We were able to celebrate the Lord's Supper, share communion together. Our Wednesday night classes went virtual. Our Sunday night meetings went virtual.
Everything went virtual.
Everything went
Children's
virtual.
ministry went virtual.
Children's ministry
Youth
went
ministry
virtual.
went virtual.
Yeah.
Because at that time, we were in a national shutdown. I mean, literally, you were supposed to stay in your home except for going to get groceries and essential things. And we even here, our staff meetings went virtual because we had one or two of us staying home and rotating just to limit exposure, limit connection there. That way, if one of us got coronavirus, not all of us would and be out all at once or whatever.
Which, now looking back, that feels like that was forever
ago. But it was not that long ago.
Yeah, it was just April and May. But then, thank God, May the 31st, we got to regather. We called it our regathering services. And that was when we went to having 2 services on Sunday morning so that we can still social distance and we can try to be as safe as possible, which is the pattern that we're still in today.
We're still in that right now.
We're still in that pattern today, that we have 2 services on Sunday morning.
This is airing. When will this air?
This will air a few weeks from now. It'll be mid-December.
Yeah. So right now we're recording it the week of Thanksgiving of 2020.
Right.
And we are still... And foresee doing this into 2021. Because as of this recording, it looks like there might be a vaccine or several vaccines being distributed December 12th, but they're not anticipating automatically just lifting everything.
Right. That's not like, vaccines, we're back to normal. That's not what that means. No.
So we're going to continue to have to do that into 2021.
Yeah, because obviously God is on the move and He is working, but God has also given us brains to be safe. And as your leaders, we want to do things in the safest way possible. That is part of Derrick's job as the under shepherd here, to be making sure that we're shepherding both spiritually and physically, that you are safe. And so that's how things will continue. But thank God that we've been able to meet together and at least see each other's faces, even though we can't hug and shake hands and all that stuff like we used to. We can still see each other, because if there's one thing I think that we've learned in 2020, we have to have community. We have to have it. We need interaction with other believers.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen that play out in a myriad of ways. But the community of faith, the fellowship of believers is such a vital part of our growth as followers of Christ. And so thank God that since the end of May, we've been able to do that week in and week out. Yes, it's different. But thank God we've been able to do that.
And we anticipate and hope that eventually we won't have to any longer.
Absolutely, yeah. This too shall pass.
Right now, it's we're still in a pandemic. Yeah. People in our own connections, and I had an aunt pass away this week that shouldn't have passed away except for COVID, and even a church member whose funeral is being held today.
Yeah, as we speak. Yeah.
In a different county, so I wasn't able to attend. So, it is still affecting us. Thank goodness we haven't had any outbreaks at church, but many of our church members have gotten it.
Right.
Many recovered, and some not.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I think one of the things through all of this, and you touched on this earlier in our conversation, is how faithful God has been specifically to our church. God is at work around the world, but Let's zero in for just a second, since we're talking about the history of Lafayette First Baptist, how faithful God has been to Lafayette First Baptist this year. And one of the ways that we've seen that play out is in this historic financial situation that we find ourselves in, that God has been so good to us that we've actually been able to expand ministry in this time when lots of churches are suffering during this time, and some have even had to close their doors. But praise God that He has been faithful to us. And so talk for just a second about the position that we find ourselves in as a church.
Yeah, thankfully, because of the generosity of God's people here and their support of His mission and what we're trying to accomplish, we in a historic way, we've never been able to say we're this well off throughout the whole year.
Right.
Like we started this year off, meeting and exceeding budget. We continue to do that through a pandemic.
Right.
And we find ourselves, in a good position above that. We're trusting God, and if the vote goes well next week,
the next couple of
weeks from this recording, we'll have increased our budget for next year. And then, I was in a building committee meeting last night where we are considering how we might be able to expand our ministry to youth.
Yeah.
And so, man, that's a blessing that some churches are not able to think about right now.
Yeah.
But because of God's faithfulness and the generosity of His people, we are able to do that. And I think that we need to celebrate that and be thankful for that.
Yeah, and I think we could kind of sum up this entire discussion of what 2020 has been as look how good God is. Look how good God is, and I think again to reiterate what we said earlier, that a lot of times in the face of adversity, that's not the first place we look. That's just an unfortunate side effect of fallen, sinful human beings, that our first place to look is, why is this happening? I have to preserve myself. And yet, I love the fact, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that God has given us the perspective this year to say, hey, I'm still on my throne.
Yeah.
I still love you.
Yeah.
I've not forsaken you. God is still good, and we can still trust Him through that.
Well, I love that. That's the point of this history. You read through it.
Absolutely.
That's what these people are saying.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be saying through history.
Yeah.
And so you may want to introduce the next thing that we're going to do here. We're going to introduce some ladies to you. And
absolutely.
What we're trying to do.
So as we've said over the past couple of weeks, we really want to continue this process.
Yeah.
We would love for in the next not too distant future to put out volume 3 of the history of Lafayette First Baptist. And so we want to continue this process of preserving our history. And so earlier this year, Derrick, through some, you were researching this stuff for your doctoral program, and then also just us trying to look back and what happened in the last pandemic. We came up with the idea that, hey, we really need to have some people who are curating our history.
Yeah.
Because, again, there's some really cool stuff that God has done.
Yeah.
And we have really old things that we can look at and say, man, how cool is this? We have this piece of history. And so earlier this year, the nominating committee nominated 2 ladies to be the curators of our history room or heritage room, and that was presented in church conference back over the summer and voted on. The church voted to make Sam Barker and Hannah Suits the curators of our heritage room, and so we've interviewed them, and we'd like to introduce you to them. And so we would love for you to just hear their heart of kind of what their vision for how they're going to move forward in preserving our history. And so we'll be back to wrap this all up here in just a few minutes, but meet Sam Barker and Hannah Suits. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we would love to introduce you, like we said, to the new curators of our history room here at Lafayette First Baptist, Sam Barker and Hannah Suits. They are sisters, if you didn't know, but they are going to be a great team moving forward, curating the history room at our church. Because just like we've been talking, God has done incredible things in the history of our church, and he's going to continue to do incredible things, and we want to celebrate that. So Hannah, Sam, welcome to the Path Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a little bit about, number one, why you guys agreed to be curators of the history room, and then 2, sort of what is your vision as we move forward for how we're going to continue to celebrate God being at work at our church?
Okay, I'll start. I'm Sam, for those of you that don't know. I'm the older sister, if that matters.
That's right.
But
everybody marks that down. That's right.
Everybody has to take note, yeah. But no, we're really excited to get this started. We can't wait to reach out and to seek some different people. Our overall goal with being the history curator team is to let people know more about our church's rich history. There's so much there, and I don't think we've done it justice to really show that. So we're really looking forward to dig in there. And there are so many people, both new and longtime members, that don't know much about the history of the church.
Right. My name's Hannah. Like she was saying, we're so excited to get started. You know, we've been members our whole lives, and there's even things that we aren't sure about that we're still learning along the way. So we're looking forward to digging deeper and exploring all those things as well. One thing we wanted to point out is that if you aren't familiar with the Heritage Room, this is one place that we're really going to be showcasing these things about our history. And there's so many things already that are already there. But we're looking forward to exploring those, and then also just kind of changing things out, making some exhibits for everyone to explore. And also not just kind of doing the research ourselves, but seeking out some people that are really knowledgeable in our church that have either, been through it or have, firsthand experience with it, and that can teach or tell us about more about the history of our church.
Yeah, we plan on starting up the first exhibit around Easter, and then continuing to introduce new ideas every 3 months or so, and just making it exciting and making that room, even more welcoming and interesting for people to stop by and see.
Yeah. So there's probably some people at our church that just now are hearing for the first time that we have a heritage room at our church. So remind everybody of where the heritage room is at our church.
Okay, if you're familiar with the choir room, if you go down the hallway with the men's restroom entrance on there, that's the entrance to the heritage room. It'll be right there on your right.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful room, lots of glass windows, so you can see everything in there from the hallway. But yeah, it's a great place. I have never been a part of a church that had a heritage room, and I think it is one of the coolest things about our church that we get to celebrate how God has been at work.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite rooms, and there are cool things in there that I got to explore when I first came, just because I wanted to learn as much as I could. But then I also had to explore a lot of it because of my dissertation and my doctoral program, where you have to look into the history. And so, I'm like, man, more people need to know about this. And so this gives us an opportunity to kind of highlight that put it in front of our people, and also highlight some of the people that know a lot about that. We have a lot of folks with us still that know a lot about our history. And so we're going to, one of the things that we talked about with the ladies was doing some videos, and maybe even having a TV that occasionally is a part of an exhibit that runs some of those videos and some of those interviews. And so we're going to be looking for folks to help us do that, and I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah, I think that this has the potential to be something really cool that it can be sort of a rallying point, if you will, for our church, that look at how good God has been to us at Lafayette First. And we know he's going to continue to do that in the future because we've seen him do it over and over. Well, Hannah and Sam, thank you guys so much for, number one, agreeing to be our new curators, but number two, for coming on the podcast so that we could talk to you for a few minutes. And we look forward to what you guys are going to showcase in the days ahead.
Thanks. We're excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies. Appreciate it.
All righty.
So as you can see, Hannah and Sam, they are passionate about preserving the heritage here at our church. And obviously they're going to be gleaning stuff that God has done and how he has been faithful from members. And as we asked you last week, we would love to hear from you. If we could connect you with them, that would be a great thing. So if you need to email us, you can email us at thepath@lafayettefirst.life, or you can comment on the YouTube video or the podcast. Or you can just come by the church office and say, hey, I've got something I'd love to share with Sam and Hannah.
Documents, or just, we'd love to hear, we're going to do videos and interviews and stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a really cool thing, I think, because if we're being honest, that's what we have in Scripture, is this heritage of look how good and faithful God has been to his people throughout the history of the world. And we want to do that on a very small scale here at Lafayette First Baptist. Look how faithful God has been through the history of this church. So thank you for tuning in, and we hope that this maybe sparks some interest in you to want to learn more about how God's been faithful in the history of Lafayette First Baptist. But until next time, I am Jason.
I'm Derrick.
And we hope that you'll tune in as we continue down the path next time.